Back in 1980, there were many heavy metal bands coming out of the United Kingdom. Iron Maiden released their debut album. Before that, we had Motorhead and Judas Priest. But across the pond came another band. They were called Manowar. Today's video, I will talk about the history of Manowar leading up to the album Hail to England. I will talk about how a band from a small town in upstate New York created heavy metal music that was epic. The lyrics were about fantasy, sword and sorcery, and mythology. Later, I'll talk about the album Hail to England and how the album cover had a major mistake. I'll also talk about the songs such as the short instrumental that reminded me of Van Halen to the 9-minute closer where they sing about the devil. The story begins in 1980. A man named Joey DeMaio meets a guy named Ross the Boss. Joey DeMaio was working for Black Sabbath on their Heaven and Hell tour as a bass guitar tech and fireworks manager. Ross the Boss was part of the opening act in a band called Shakin' Street. They eventually got together and formed Manowar. They hired a drummer whose name is Donnie Hamzik and a singer named Eric Adams. The band eventually got a record contract with Liberty Records in 1981. They released their debut album called Battle Hymns in 1982. They then started to tour, landing a spot opening for Ted Nugent. But in 1983, they started to become more popular. So they got a deal with Megaforce Records in the US and Music for Nations in Europe. They then released their album Into Glory Ride. This album was also seen as being influential in the creation of Viking Metal. Now here is where things get interesting. This band became very popular in the United Kingdom. They planned a big tour of the UK, but they ran into some problems and had to cancel the tour. They decided to name their next album Hail to England as a way of apologizing for the canceled tour, but they made one major mistake. They used the wrong flag on the album cover. The flag on the album cover is the United Kingdom, not the flag of England. In all fairness, as an American, I probably went through most of my life not knowing there was a difference. To any Americans watching, England is a country and the United Kingdom is a combination of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Back to the album, it was recorded in 6 days. The album only has 7 songs and is 33 minutes long. It is also celebrating 40 years, but I could not find an exact release date. The only thing I found online was that it was released in February of 1984. The album features 3 of the 4 members that I mentioned before with different drummer. His name was Scott Columbus. I read some user reviews from the Metal Archives website. The high score was 100%. Most of the other reviews had it between 70 and 95%, but not everyone loved this album. There were 2 scores under 60%. One gave it 59%, complaining that the last 2 songs brought the album down, and one reviewer gave it a score of 57%, calling it weak. The opening track is Blood of My Enemies. This is probably their most popular song from the album. It has even been covered by various bands from different subgenres, such as heavy metal, death metal, and power metal. The song is epic and heavy and has a catchy chorus. The lyrics are typical Manowar. They are singing about going to battle and killing. There's also some Norse mythology with a mention of Asgard. Most of the reviews that I read gave the song praise, but some complained that it had a slow intro. I can agree with that. It takes about 45 seconds to take off, but it starts with an epic scream by Eric Adams. The next song is Each Dawn I Die. Metal Archives user Twisted Psychology said this was one of the band's most esoteric tracks. I felt that the song was one of the better ones. The opening guitar riff was slow and heavy. On the other hand, user Josphelex, or however I say that, said it was one of the 2 mediocre songs, but this user also gave the album a score of 80%. The user Frankenstein said it was wrongly placed as a slow song at the early point to suck the energy from the great opera. There were other users that praised the bass playing on this track. Therefore, the song got mixed reactions, but I thought it was a strong track. Kill with Power is the next song, and this one starts with a cool drum intro. This was one of the faster and heavier songs. I read some mixed reviews for this song. If you remember the user Josphelex, or however you say it, they said it was the other of the 2 mediocre songs. He mentioned this as the other one. On the other hand, The user Nahorf said this was his favorite song and praised the drum work. I thought it was one of the better ones. It was kind of cheesy, but what do you expect? It's Manowar. After that is the title track called Hail to England. The user Fury of the Blade said that this one had another catchy riff with another sing-along chorus with another badass solo. The formula works. On the other hand, the user Doom Bubba said that this was the lightest track. I thought it had a very straightforward metal sound. I think Eric Adams has some of his best vocals on this track, especially in the chorus. The user Nightcrawler said that the guitar solo is insane. I thought it was one of the stronger tracks. The next track is called Army of the Immortals. The song had one common complaint with users. They said it was too repetitive. Conversely, most users said that it was also a catchy song. The user named Vampire Killer said, Army of the Immortals is a pretty epic new wave of British heavy metal-esque number with a catchy main riff, but it doesn't get anywhere and ends up becoming a lot more repetitive than the other songs. This user gave the album 93% and said that this was the one song that held it back from a perfect 100%. In my opinion, I liked that they wrote this love letter to their fans, but I can agree the song lacks a little bit of originality. Now we get to the last two tracks. In my opinion, I think these two tracks bring the album down. Let's take a look at what everyone else is saying. The next song is the instrumental called Black Arrows. This song got some hate with some of the reviewers. Twisted Psychology called it dog shit. This user called it a true endurance test of directionless shredding. The user also made a reference to Van Halen's Eruption, which was my exact thought. Pretty much all the reviewers on this page hated the song, except one reviewer named Orc. This person said that it was the best solo I've ever heard in my entire life, and he praised Joey DeMaio's bass playing. This just goes to show that music is subjective, but in my opinion, I thought it was a filler track trying to emulate Van Halen's Eruption. I also thought that Flight of the Bumblebee from Kings of Metal was a much better instrumental. Next is Bridge of Death. I have mixed feelings about this song. On the one hand, it's an epic 9-minute heavy metal song comparable to some of the longer songs by Halloween and Iron Maiden. But on the other hand, the lyrics did not seem to fit the band. They were satanic and they sounded like something that Merciful Fate would write at that time. I would say the majority of the reviewers gave the song praise. User Dawn of the Shred said that the song was sporting a chilling intro and being perhaps Manowar's finest epic number. This was also the user who gave the album a 57%, calling it weak. But conversely, there were a few users who did not like the song. A user named The Ghoul said that there was part of the song that was too repetitive. A user named Metal Gurger said the main riff is as lazy as it can be, and the outro is awful with major guitar detuning and Christmas bells noise. So as you can see, there was mixed reactions. So that is all. Let me know what you think of this album. Is it one of your favorite albums by the band, or do you prefer some of their others? At this point in the video, I usually suggest related videos, but this happens to be my first Manowar review. But a few years ago, I reviewed an album by a band called Wizard that was very similar to Manowar, so I'll put that right there. Please remember, like this video, it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already, and I will see you in the next one.